for us, we started out, we Googled lean accounting. We stumbled across an article by Brian Maskell, and it seemed to give us some indication and made us more curious, and I guess more importantly, linked us up with Lean Frontiers, where they hold an annual accounting summit and workshops. We went to the summit in 2015. Brian Maskell was there. We did a full day workshop with him, which really gave us some foundational information. We also booked Real Numbers, which to us, reading through that and sharing it with our team when we got back, helped give some foundational knowledge that I think was very useful in the beginning for us to kind of understand what we were really trying to achieve.
Okay.
And then earlier this year, we went to another Lean Frontiers workshop that Jerry Solomon was putting on. And this was more focused on the relationship between accounting, reporting, finance, and the operations team, and basically bridging that gap between kind of two departments that maybe don't always see things the same way.
Right.
And this, to me, was really the first time the concept that lean accounting has these two pillars or two sides to it. And it was something I took back as an understanding a little bit more of there's more to the concept of lean accounting than just a reporting aspect. So the first thing that...
Hey, Ted?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna, so that was, the little bell that went off was my 5-minute timer. So we're into the 10 minutes of the two sides of lean accounting. But I just want to know, does anybody have any questions about, how Ted and Wonderful sort of got to where they are, or some of the things they looked at or did? I want to try to make this as interactive as possible. You can go ahead and either just shout out or raise your hand if you want to be recognized.
This is Thomas. I am actually wondering if Ted's going to be willing to share these slides with us.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I guess I'll send them to Eric, and Eric, if you can figure a way to
I'll go ahead and post them. No problem.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Definitely.
Thank you.
All right, Ted. If anybody else wants to jump in, they're fine, but you can go ahead and move on.
Okay, thanks. So the first side is a concept of accounting for lean. So more or less things that the accounting finance team move away from the more traditional, at least for us, and I'm basing a lot of this on our experience interpretation. So if anybody out there has tried any other things or that, feel free to chime in. But the concept of value stream costing, where you're not so focused on standard costing at a SKU that absorbs a lot of allocations, but rather looking at the cost as they apply to a value stream, hopefully limiting the allocations as much as possible. Because oftentimes, and Jerry did some great examples as to why you get the wrong answer when you start doing the standard costing approach. The box score reporting, which is another tool that we've implemented. Like I said earlier, we pretty much started with this in our operations of trying to do some lean reporting. The idea is it's a single page report that marries non-financial KPIs with capacity and then the financial performance for hopefully aligning the operations, finance, and everybody involved in the value stream into one clear performance indicator.
Okay.
And a plain English P&L, which again is meant to strip out this accounting terminology and make it relevant to an entire team that may not have a CPA or that background. So I think that is one of the other things that for us, we realized we have a lot of terminology that just makes sense to us, but outside of our little conference room, nobody really knows what we're talking about. So.
Well, Ted, like, I really don't mind the fact that it makes sense to you guys, but the fact that some of you guys seem to believe it, I think that's another part of the problem, right?
Well, and I'll be honest, like until a couple of years ago, we were fighting for it, right? So it's
okay.
It's definitely something I think it's worth addressing in that, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And then the other side of it is the lean for accounting. So like, how do you take lean principles and put it into the back office, into the office setting? So, we do process mapping of the production area, but that also applies in payroll, AP, and month end and all that. They're all processes that have waste in them inherently. So mapping that out so that you can look for where the waste is occurring is something that, from our experience, has pointed us in different directions than what our anecdotal problem solving before we're doing, where more or less the person complaining the loudest got the project, and that wasn't always where the biggest bottleneck was. Standard procedures, and this is another thing, is I'd be curious as to how many people so maintain the procedures. We found we have procedures for everything, but they become stale, and individuals vary from the procedures over time and are not really keeping those current and documented. It's more of a project to update everything, which makes it hard to measure and put in improvement, because you don't really have a baseline to start with. And the measuring is another important thing that we didn't do before earlier this year. It wasn't something that we were actively tracking how many employees were paid correctly, or how many journals needed to be reworked, or anything of that nature. And so it's another concept that I think in an operations area is very familiar, but for us in the back office was something that was somewhat new, or is still new to our approach to the accounting and finance. The visual controls, the day by hour, first time through, very familiar on the floor, but a lot of our areas, especially the rework of having to reissue a check or correct an entry, is hugely time consuming. And I think if you're not measuring it, you just accept it as being part of the process. As we've started measuring it, immediately you're surprised to see just in a month how much is having to be reworked. And we use Oracle, a very powerful ERP system, but it can quickly generate millions of transactions that are wrong, and fixing that or correcting that is hugely time consuming. So this is another area, I think as if this group goes forward, I'd be interested to hear how others look at their own groups and determine what should be the focus for improvement.
Well, Ted, I have a sort of question on the visual control matrix, and it kind of takes into a realm maybe I'm a little bit more familiar with. The hour by hour and the first time through. Do you have like a huge variety of transactions, or do you do a lot of work to sort of try to group them into certain categories? Or I'm thinking like in accounting, are there value streams of accounting?
Well, like for us right
How
now,
do you
I
think
think,
about
yeah, for us, the easiest one for me to I think everybody would associate with is like our AP department. So they're receiving invoices every day. They're opening invoices. They pile up on the desk or in the inbox or that to be processed and paid. You know, the idea here is, trying to level load that work to where we are processing, 100 invoices every 4 hours or that,
it? Right.
and tracking it so that it's a little more apparent especially when we get behind. For myself to be able to say, hey, you guys, it looks like we're half a day behind. Is there a system problem or something else of that nature? So.
Okay. Well, that was sort of also the 10-minute warning, but you got one more set of bullets there.
Yeah, and so the last thing is applying continuous improvement to help the flow of information in the area. So I think that's something that we often ask our operations team to continuously improve, but we need to remember we too have those same sorts of needs.
Okay.
And then I put together this slide, which is basically just topics I generated from the one before. For myself, something that I find in both sides is the cultural change and addressing fears of losing control if you're not measuring everything, every minute, every step of the way.
Yeah.
How the reporting, especially until it's a pretty big journey to get fully lean is what I'm noticing. So there's this point in time where you start making good decisions, but your traditional reporting is going to look like you're not making good decisions. So how do you address those things and getting the full buy-in, not only from the organizational, the top down, but just in the individual teams. A lot of times, especially for my group, I know coming back from Jerry's session, we were, let's start measuring all this and putting it up. There's some apprehension that, hey, if I put up there I'm behind, you're gonna think negatively of me. So building that trust, and then again KPIs, we struggle to figure out the right ones to measure. I think that's another critical thing, not to over measure. How do you weed out the ones that are really not necessary, and linking the floor matrix up to what the CFO and president see, or you want it to be relevant at every level, but you want them to have a connection too. That is something that, as we've gone through the process, has been a little more, it seems easy on the beginning. Is like, oh, we all have this same goal in mind, but it does pose some challenges at certain levels to keep it relevant, right? Because there are different needs at different levels of the organization. So does anybody else have any ideas, thoughts, questions?
I actually had a quick question. I'm Ben Lakes. I'm one of Eric's students. And on the previous slide, it was one of the points underneath it was like, don't use the accounting lingo.
Yeah.
So under there, it said to start focusing more on basically cash transactions opposed to accumulating. How do you initiate that? Because if you're let's say you're not a lean company yet, and you're already have all these transactions set up through receivables or whatever, through payables and whatnot, how do you make that transition into just strictly doing cash?
Well, so we're not, by no means do I want to project myself as we are there yet, right? We're taking steps towards this.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do is basically take our cash activity and report that in the relevant, so labor as the cash we paid out, materials as the cash. And then because we haven't fully changed, we are still on a standard costing platform, but we just we net all of those changes that are related to inventory just as an inventory adjustment line, as one line on our P&L report, so that our management team can see how the cash that is coming in or going out, as it were, in the month or period. And then the inventory adjustment is basically adjusting for the delta between the amount of money that was held on the balance sheet at the beginning to the end. So it's a little bit easier. What we're finding, especially as we talk to our operations team, it's easier for them to understand we spent more in labor this month because of XYZ. It's easier to talk about it in the current than talking about a variance at some point in the future that was triggered by events in the past. And that is where we're trying to take it. And like I say, we're early on in trying to bring about these changes. So we're learning as we go. I will say we did meet with our outside auditing team is KPMG, and they've been very supportive in us trying to make this move and simplify and be more moving towards this lean approach, which I think was one concern that initially we were nervous that it would be a battle to ever actually make the financial changes, but they've been very supportive so far. And like I say, we're very early in using this, and we're running in parallel. It's not like we've abandoned the old by any means. We're doing a parallel right now of the kind of the current method as well as trying to use the lean approach to this reporting.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions before I think the next thing up is sort of the box score. Ted, I got one sort of quick one for you.
Yeah.
It sounds like you got KPMG, so your auditing company, I guess, is having good sort of buy-in on this. But your question about potential topics, how to establish links of information from floor to corporate board, sounds like there's some battles there that need to be fought. So what do those battles sort of look like, or like, do you have like a for instance?
Well, I think our solution until recently has been basically to measure everything at every level, right? So we wind up getting way too many matrix going on the floor, and way too many of them are reported upstream to the executive level. Right. A lot of it has been, there's a balance and I think an evolution to understand that you can cover the same topic without measuring it exactly the same way. So I think our corporate group identified our safety matrix to be a TIR, which is an index of incidents that occurs based upon the number of hours at work. So it's kind of a safety matrix. To the guys on the floor, a safety cross is way more relevant. They understand whether or not everybody was safe yesterday or not. So green or red on the day makes more relevance to them. But and like I say, this is it's a bit of a new cultural experience for us. So some of these things, they start out, the group that originally came up with, hey, we need to measure these things consistently throughout the organization, was more kind of at the senior level. And they're like, well, TIR is what we use to determine how we're doing. Yeah. And so, but pushing that down to the floor it's almost insulting, right? Because then you've got an individual who gets hurt that is shown as a fraction on a board, right? Which isn't really a very human thing.
It's not a very lean, respectful kind of thing.
Exactly. And and by no means did anybody start out as thinking of it in a negative, it wasn't like there's this mean group of executives who they said, let's measure this, and kind of in our traditional top-down management, every level copied what they said, and we're now going back and reassessing like the relevance to the area, right? And to be honest, this is one of those things that for us came out as we started to do the box score, which is kind of the next thing we're gonna kind of discuss.
Okay.
Is that good? Does anybody else have anything to chime in on?
Yeah, just one more thing on that slide. This is Jerry.
Yeah.
Ted, that was great discussion. Just one of the bullets you had on the previous slide, on the right-hand side, the second bullet that says not being in compliance with GAAP. I'm not sure what you meant there, because pretty much everything that we do, if done correctly in Lean for Accounting, will result in GAAP-approved financial statements.
Yeah,
so I'm not sure.
I think it's the perception, right, Ted? Not necessarily the doubt.
And that's kind of, it's more or less getting it's the cultural bias that says somehow these changes will not be accepted in GAAP. And
I got you.
We did get a lot of initial pushback from my counterpart, the corporate controller, was very skeptical on this. But as I said, our auditing team has been very supportive, and GAAP is their life, right? So, but I do think, just in a broader topic, this might be something others may encounter, right? And not to get scared by somebody thinking it wouldn't be compliant with GAAP, because it's a fundamental thing that you remain compliant.
Right.
So,
okay, cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. So the next thing we're going to discuss is the box score. For us, this was the first lean thing we attempted to do, I guess, from the accounting reporting side of things. So this is an example of a template we're using. We have this in one of our largest processing facilities. They process basically half of our shipments for pistachios. They're also the simplest value stream, because the whole facility supports one value stream, which was one reason we selected it to pilot our lean approach, was because it naturally weeded out a lot of allocations that we have in other facilities. So, and for us, this took many, revisions to get to agreement as to what we were going to measure in the performance measurements. So, so the performance measurements are basically there to identify and show out the variances that occur within the, where we stray away from our target that may not be financial, but is something that we want to address within the value stream. So, and again, for us, I will say this, in the beginning, we were very people focused. So we were measuring headcount and overtime and all these things related to labor. We quickly realized that really wasn't the cause of our problem. It was more a symptom. So when we were having excess labor, it really had nothing to do, there wasn't something to do with the people. It was something to do with either we'd had failures or late shipments, or our inventory was building up or something like that. So and it is another thing that we have, as we've gone through this, and to be honest, we started this in February, so it's still new to the group, but we have, I think in the last 3 months or so, 4 months, we've settled on these and are starting to have the discussions trigger more improvement projects and things to address than our earlier attempts, where we were kind of, I think, stuck measuring the things we tracked before. And then the other thing is, it's meant to be on one page, not measuring 20 different items at a 2-font report. It's intended to be simple, very, very straightforward, and focused on measuring the things that are important to the value stream. So
Ted, I just want to say, you don't have 20 items, you have 18. So
right.
That's like, too lower is a nice.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, so there's these 3 components that we're measuring: the performance, which are kind of the KPIs that are going on within the value stream; the capacity of the value stream. I think for us, the one.
Can I interrupt you for a minute? So Ryan has a question before.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. If you click on the participant button, Ted, if you got that.
All right.
People, if they raise their hand, you'll be able to see.
I see.
Yeah.
All right. Whoa.
Yeah, so maybe you're just going to get to it now, Ted, but I was going to ask some questions about the capacity and how exactly you're measuring that. And
I was kind of curious on that too.
Yeah, so for us, the capacity is probably been the hardest piece of this for us to calculate out. And I think in the original, we had a misconception of defining what was productive, non-productive, and available time. And then our struggle even today so productive time is the time that our line is actually producing, right? So this is the percent of the available time that the line is actually outputting product. Non-productive time is the sanitation, the things that are required, but don't allow production to occur.
So if the conveyor belt's running and nuts are coming off the line, that's productive time. But if it's cleaning the conveyor belt, that's non-productive time. Correct.
Yeah.
So sort of a value added, non-value added.
Yeah.
Sort of look.
Exactly. And then the other thing for us was, the available time. We originally approached this like we need productive time to be 100%. And as we started understanding a little more, we realized that's impossible. And the deal what we're trying to do with the available time is, as we do improvement on the line and we increase our available time, it's then looking for a way to take the available time and create more productive time out of that. We can get available time by improving either the productive time or the non-productive time. So if we implement a better way of cleaning the machine, a more efficient way of doing that, it would add to the available time, which then in turn would give our sales team an ability to go sell more product without really costing us any more, right? Because our time is already baked into our value stream costs. We're not actually having to
Right.
incur more.
So looks like Thomas has a question.
So Ted, I'm curious on the productive time. Are you measuring for the entire value stream, or a constraint process, or like a shared resource? How are you doing that?
Yeah. So for us, the productive time, this particular facility is very. It's basically one pipe that goes into a bag. So we're able to get our productive time by measuring the output of this specific line. It is one of our challenges as we are exploring moving into our retail lines. They have other constraints within the line, and we're realizing it's kind of step one. We need to map that out and kind of figure out where is the constraint that should be measured, right? So, and I don't know, Jerry, if you have any comments on the capacity and techniques of measuring that are more straightforward.
No, whoever asked the question was right on. It'll drive you crazy if you try to measure the capacity of each and every step of an operation. So you want to look for your constraint, that area, which is the biggest challenge. Of course, if you improve the constraint, only by improving the constraint are you going to free up revenue producing capability. So if you have a complex operation, just put one area on that capacity section of the chart, which is your constraint. And as soon as you eliminate one constraint, another one will pop up. So there'll always be an opportunity to fill in that section.
Yeah,
you just want to look.
That's basic TOC. But
Yes, it is, for sure.
Okay. Hey, so it looks like we had a question from Ben and Susan at Oakland or at Children's Hospital.
We were also curious about the capacity calculations. Is the available time the sum of the productive and non-productive?
It's basically, it'll add up to 100%, right? So the available is 100% minus the productive and non-productive.
So the 100,
Yeah, go ahead.
What else would there be besides
the productive and non-productive?
Well, there's idle, there's in theory, there's idle time within the line, right? So you wouldn't, and in a sense, you don't want that. At least in our situation, we don't want. We need there to be some available time because we are, there will be unforeseen downtime and things that you would need to absorb. So that is baked into the calculation.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So you might run at 85% of available time might be sort of your target. So you've always got like 15% extra capacity to handle special orders or something like that.
Exactly. And then if that was to build up to a 25% available time, then we would know, the goal is to keep that on target, to keep these so you don't want there to be excess available time, I guess, is what we're trying to manage to. So if we see our available time building up, then it's more trigger on our sales team to look for opportunities to
fill with productive time.
Some demand for that line.
Yeah. Okay.
But it is for us, this was a very complex. It's hard. It was harder for us than some of the other pieces because, like I say, just that determining the productive, non-productive, and then measuring the non-productive. We traditionally had thought of sanitation and that as part. It's required to do production, so it's productive time, but we've we've changed that to where we're saying, well, that's not really true. If we could somehow improve the way we're doing maintenance or improve the way we're doing our sanitation, we would generate available time. And that's more or less where we're wanting people to focus, is that your project, when you're looking for improvement, it doesn't necessarily have to be just to make boxes go faster off the line. We could actually get more boxes off the line if we could do sanitation quicker in that.
Right.
And we have had some, like we used to sanitize our lines by shutting them down and cleaning them with soap and water, basically. And we found a dry ice, we can achieve the same sanitation. And basically it took a 8-hour process down to an hour and a half. So that on its own gave us more available time that wasn't really previously thought of in that manner, I guess.
So Ted, I have another question. I hope we're beating this to death for everybody, but like on the available time percent. So I think about this in terms of like OEE, like overall equipment efficiency, available time. And do you establish a standard that says everybody uses 2 shifts as available time, or do you use 3 shifts? Is it 24/7, or like who gets to pick the available time for a particular plant or operation?
So for us, it's the value stream dictates what they
pick,
how many shifts they need, right? So, and it does, for us, it has changed. This operation last year, we had a very short year in our harvest, so we just didn't have as many nuts to process. So they were on a 1-shift schedule, and now we've expanded that this year as we've had a more a larger crop and extended that to a 2-shift. But the value stream would, basically this isn't like accounting coming in and dictating you're going to hit 15%. It's very much a collaborative adventure, and the input from the operations and what it is and what is actually going on is critical, in my opinion, to this being a successful endeavor.
Okay.
I mean, you could think of it in terms of that section is making the value stream map come alive on a regular basis. And it's not so much what is our standard or anything like that. It's that column that says target and where are we. What we want to do is just get better each and every week, month, and make that visible to everyone. Because ultimately, to improve the total equation of the company, we want sales and marketing to be able to see that we have more available time and put some pressure on them to start selling that available time, because it's going to go through there just with the cost of material.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing is the target. That is another concept for us that it's not set in stone. It's meant to evolve and get better. So as we do projects that say it should deliver a better target, then we would adjust our target to what that project was supposed to deliver, to make sure that we're controlling the improvement that we said we got at the end of that project. Right. So it's meant, and like I say, we meet and review this every week. We spend a 15-minute meeting to go through the performance of this value stream. And most of the discussions are on how the if there is a variance, what are we going to put in place as a countermeasure to get back to the target? And then as well as where are there areas that we are working on to improve the existing target. So it's really meant to be a like somewhat of a living document to show how you're doing over time, and then again to be very transparent with all those involved in the value stream as to how things are going compared to what that target was, and hopefully showing the improvement as time goes by.
So Ted, just doing a little sort of a time check. So we've got like 11 more minutes, and that's I think that's the whole thing for not only your presentation but also the discussion. But it seems like everybody's feeling pretty free to jump in and ask questions as you go along. I want to be cognizant of the time, so I'm kind of letting you drive and let you know what the time left is.
Yeah, no, and so I basically what we've discussed to this point is how we're using the box score. I have a couple other slides. Well, maybe I'll go through. So the one thing for us is that this idea that what we're reporting for our cost in our value stream, we wanted to be pure to not pollute it with allocations. So we are, as the value stream produces a profit, that profit isn't necessarily 100% going to the company. Part of that profit is going to pay for the allocation of administration costs or things of that nature that haven't been, that are traditionally we would allocate all of these costs, which would then pollute the numbers to the operations group or the people within the value stream. And one of these concepts of trying to just let people focus on the costs that they are associating with, and over time, as it is appropriate, to try to move these costs into the value streams directly where it makes sense.
And Ted, one thing I noticed on your cost numbers, very round numbers and zeros.
Yeah.
So you're not carrying this out to like decimal places and cents and things like that.
No, and so this is stylized. I mocked this up to kind of illustrate it. So these aren't real numbers, but for what we report out, we don't we don't show pennies or anything. We try to round to the whole, the whole number, because again, being an accountant, especially a cost accountant for 15 years, 4 decimal places was, my haven. But the rest of the world looks at that as being trivial. So I've learned, try to keep things as relevant as we can. And again, like I say, the pennies and the $1-2 are really not, you don't want to talk about that stuff. The idea is to really try to hone your discussions in on what's available for us to improve. And you don't want to get, and that's where the allocations, I think, have, at least in our organization, and it's another topic I'd be interested in how others approach this, but we have a pretty hefty allocation right now of cost into our value streams as they go, and it does really result in detachment from a group when you're reporting numbers that are 30, 40, 50% allocated costs that they feel they have absolutely no control over. So that's one of the other or for me, this is another one of those things we've learned in the last year is this idea of, our goal ultimately is to get better, right?
Yeah.
And just being accurate is secondary to getting better, right? So we don't need to be polluting numbers and causing confusion. We're trying to evolve to a reporting package that is meaningful to the users, and then hopefully ultimately facilitates the desire to improve something.
Yeah, I know my wife works for a large corporation, and they share their monthly numbers, and walking out of the meeting, the big buzz is around the giant corporate allocation item, and saying like those SOBs at corporate are spending our money again.
Right.
Not around, the things that they can control and should be focused on, right?
No, exactly.
Yeah. So Ryan has a question.
Yeah, Ryan.
Yeah, he said, so I'm looking at the cost of people line, and you've got direct, indirect, and salary, and I'm wondering, so for, say the salary folks that are in there, are these, just sort of plant administration, and is there a way that you're allocating those costs to each of the value streams?
So each of the value streams have a dedicated management team that go into the salaries group. So we have stripped away all allocations on their reporting. If there's you need to be like 85% dedicated to a value stream for your cost to show up there. And if your costs show up there, it's 100% of your cost.
So if the costs don't show up there, then is that in the admin column?
Yeah, so then it would move over to the admin cost center, which is what is accumulated to be paid for by the profits of the individual value streams.
Yep, okay.
Okay.
And like I say, we're using the facility we're at right now. This works very easily at because they are 100% dedicated to the value stream. Our other facilities actually are much more. They have multiple value streams, and they are currently very much sharing resources, and so. As we've discussed moving into other areas, the idea of getting more dedication of people, and I think one of the arguments that we've come across that supports this idea is if you wanted people to feel as they're a part of a team, moving them to a different area every 3 months is kind of defeating that team building culture. So, but again, historically, we would share when you showed up, and if there was a need in almonds, you would go to almonds. It's almost like grammar school, and you show up for kickball, right? You got picked to go on what team. It's not quite that random, but there is a lot of shuffling of people. And we're trying to work to where we're getting a little more, and not, like I say, there's cross training that occurs within a value stream, right? It's not necessarily like you're doing the same exact task every day, but trying to get it to a little bit more so that people are feeling they are a part of this value stream and they're not just there for the moment. Okay.
Hey Thomas, you got a question?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to have to jump off in about 3 minutes. So I appreciate your presenting this, Ted, and sharing with us. And definitely on metrics, actionable is the key.
Yeah.
And I have a question on a previous slide. You were talking about problem solving, and I'm wondering, do you have a standard tool that you use, like a PDSA or A3, or what do you guys use to attack that issue or opportunity?
So we are, we put all of our hourly staff, and we have around 1,500 employees. So it was a pretty monumental task through a structured problem solving PDCA. We do use an A3 for documenting the problem solving. We're actually one of the matrix on there. If you see win team participation, that is what we refer to as our problem solving teams and throughout the organization. So we're trying to get all employees engaged in problem solving, and basically we've dedicated an hour a week for them to be allowed to work on their problems, and trying to track that everybody's participating. And ultimately, I think our goal is to move not so much to where you're problem solving in a 1 hour segment of your week, but we're getting this continuous improvement into their daily activities. So, but yeah, we do use an A3. It's pretty straightforward, and follow the PDCA format for coming to solutions.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Excellent. Thank you.
So Ted, we have about 1 minute left on the time we had allocated. And I want to leave some time for some follow-up discussion, like what topics we're going to take next, when, and some of those sorts of things. So do you want to make some sort of wrap-up points?
Yeah, so we're pretty much at the end of what I have to share. And definitely, if anybody has experience with this or ideas, because it is still relatively new to us, so I would love to talk to you more about how your experience with this type of reporting is working.
Yeah.
And then Eric, should I share this back to you, or how do I stop?
Yeah, go ahead and share it back to me, and I'll put the video and the you just stopped screen sharing. But if you give me a set of the slides, I'll post those on Central Coast Lean along with the video, so people will have that to share back with their folks, because I think this has been a real valuable conversation. Before we go too far, though, I just want to make sure I provide Sean some service. But if you look in the chat room, so Sean had a question. It was kind of early on, and we sort of skipped over it. But he says your current ERP system is an Oracle-based model, standard cost model. So I'm assuming that your executive team is very fixed on ratios, efficiencies. To communicate performance, do you plan to create a written glossary, or I guess something to translate? Is that something that's going on in your organization?
Well, I think what we're hoping to stop using, hopefully the terminology we use will be much more known to everyone, much more common language. Definitely the ERP generates lots of ratios and variances. Those are what we are traditionally reporting to and leaving comments on. So we're trying to move away from that and more to a dialogue, really.
Yeah.
What's going on, and focused on the targets.
Okay. All right. So I guess, I sort of support Ted's thinking. He's kind of been the guinea pig for us to jump out and share some of his trials and tribulations with lean accounting. We're trying to start up this users group. Ted, you threw out some topics and things that you thought would be rich avenues for discussion. So let's see, we started in August, so August, September, October. So we're on about maybe every 3 month or once a quarter getting together. That sort of felt okay for me. What are some people's thoughts about, is this useful? Other topics? What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I thought it was useful. I don't have any ideas for any topics at the moment, but I think it was useful for myself and our group.
Yeah. So if we put together something, well, let's see. So I've got the Lean Central Coast Lean Summit, which is coming up in February. So February 9th and 10th. So let's see. So we got, so here we are, November, December, January. So February, probably the next meeting, because I jump over February, we try to get together in March again. But we would be looking for somebody to, kind of like Ted did, share maybe, what they're doing in lean accounting or just in accounting, I guess accounting in general, if they're trying to make some sort of transition or try to figure out how to make some sort of move. So does a March timeframe sound good for folks? Or, if somebody's got, real passion and enthusiasm, wants to grab the baton and, push us faster, I'm all for that. But I'm mainly speaking to maybe a little bit my bandwidth.
So March works well with me. I think that would be an appropriate time if we could get back together.
Sure. One thing I'd sort of observe, I think, I feel bad, Ted, sort of our power user at this point, and, he's been sharing some stuff with us. It would be nice to, have somebody else sort of step up to the plate and do a presentation. And I guess it could even be a presentation just based on what their challenge is, going to, lean accounting. You don't have to even, maybe necessarily be on the road yet, but you're trying to figure out how to find the road. So I'd be interested in having people do that.
Hey, Eric, this is Eric Henderson and Desiree at Rantec Power Systems.
Hey.
Good afternoon. One kind of big question we have is just, how do different businesses collect labor? Like, we're in the manufacturing world, and we're always debating about how to collect labor. I don't know if that's a common thread about how we measure. It was a good discussion today. It kind of opened our eyes to maybe looking at how we measure non-productivity time more, right, and try to really connect our accounting numbers to the non-valued time than really just the whole labor time. And so
yeah, I would agree with you, Eric. It did seem like we sort of hit like a thread where everybody was, really kind of excited and challenged by some of the things that Ted was talking about. So maybe something around, how do you, I don't know, is that the right sort of terminology to use? I'm trying to think, like, how would we sort of advertise the conversation? Labor collection practices, or what are we really talking about?
Yeah, that's a good buzzword right there. Labor collection. I mean, we're kind of stuck in our traditional way right now, pretty deep. So just any idea there?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we could also sort of throw that out and sort of pull back to the group and find out sort of what topics. I guess, I could take an action item to, after this, send out maybe Ted using your sort of proposed topics and then throwing on some things like, labor collection practices, do a little voting on, what sort of topics we want to hear about. And then we'll sort of throw it out there and see if we get some folks to chime in, and maybe somebody could agree to be the sort of the keynote presenter, so we can then have a discussion around that. Okay. So let's. I'm going to sort of take that as a yes. The other thing I just want to mention. So we've got, for Central Coast Lean, we've got our Liberating Structures group is going to get together. So that's another users group. We're going to get together at my house on Thursday, December 8th. So if you're interested in, learning more about liberating structures or participating in that group, that would be great. The other thing is, we've got Jerry Solomon on the line. And one of the things I've been talking to Jerry about after we met at the Lean Accounting Summit, the Lean Accounting Summit in San Antonio, we've been in conversation about how we can get them out here to the Central Coast. And, it's totally sort of rough figures and things like that, but we're talking to Jerry about maybe doing 2 days, and we'd have to have maybe a minimum of 20 people to make that thing fly and break even. What are some thoughts from folks? Are there people that are interested in sort of doing that? Should we sort of pursue that? What do you guys think? And knowing Jerry's on the line here, so don't insult him, okay? We still love him anyway.
Well, I would say I would like a broader group of my team to be able to go. So I can't come up with 20, but but if Jerry does a great job, I like I say, he's really helped fill in a lot of blanks for us. So I can assure you it's not time wasted.
Right. Yeah, and for Central Coast Lean, we're probably looking at in 2017, besides from the summit, maybe 3 additional workshops, and 1 workshop on lean accounting sounds like a really good thing to me. And break even or a little less than break even, I'm okay with that. Just to get some of these ideas out there and get us going on this path a little bit more aggressively, maybe. Okay. Anything else anybody has to say or share within the realm of lean accounting or just the general realm of lean? Okay. Well, with that, I'm going to say, tell everybody, thanks for coming online. I learned something or learned a few things in this discussion. I really appreciate it. And we'll be back in touch. So one of the next things you'll see from us is we'll post this stuff up on the Central Coast Lean website. I'll send out a little notice to you guys and the people that registered for this, that's up there. And like I said, then another action and do some sort of surveying about, getting together for another topic discussion in March. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Eric, for putting it together.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you guys later. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Ted.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.